and thank you very much to the Academy for inviting me to speak this evening on what is clearly a very critical issue facing all of us right now. My intent today is really to try and make the case for an ambitious vision for levelling up, founded on our strengths as a science superpower and as a nation of innovators. In the past, we've talked about rebalancing our economy for many years, and clearly the term levelling up is now in use because it's visually superior, because it does not imply that one side must come down so the other can rise. However, I think we do need to make sure that levelling up doesn't just come to mean forever catching up, and I think that's really the risk that we're in at the moment. And for that to happen, the aim must be to put all parts of our country together onto an equal economic footing, as we've just been hearing about. And for me, I think innovation is the key to enabling that. The world we live in today is very much the product of the Industrial Revolution, which took hold 200 years ago in the north of England. Yes, we now know that this has come at some cost to our climate and environment, but the benefits too are undeniable. The nations, including ourselves, who have benefited most from this revolution have seen huge improvements in the length and quality of our lives. The health and education systems we all now take for granted and the freedoms we all now enjoy all have their origins in that Industrial Revolution. This was the heyday of the north of England and for Britain, quite frankly, where we led the world in embracing the power of coal and steam, transforming industries as diverse as agriculture, manufacturing, textiles and shipping and many others. And through our canals and later the railways, which of course started between Stockton and Darlington, we had some of the most advanced transport infrastructure and systems in the world. The UK was without doubt the most innovative and economically successful country in the world at this time. It's also worth remembering that the wealth that this created and the improvements to health and education that this enabled was a major contributor in the transition to the services-based economy that we now enjoy, and which has been very much over the last 100 years driven the success of London and the South East. Again, all achieved through unrivaled innovation of global significance. So looking forward again, we're in a pretty unusual situation at the moment, a very unusual situation from a historical perspective, where we know the technological and societal advancements that we need to make this century to overcome our climate and environmental challenges. We know to some extent what the rest of this century needs to look like. We know there are problems we need to fix if we are to continue to thrive and prosper. We all know that the way we live in the second half of this century will be and needs to be fundamentally different from the way we live now. We need to fundamentally rethink our transport systems, our energy systems, our heat, our power, the way we use water, the way we produce food, the way we handle our waste. We need to do pretty much everything differently to the way we've all come to live our lives. But we also know that there are technology emerging that will help us. Renewable technologies, electric vehicles, autonomous vehicles, drones, robotic ships, 5G, 6G, and of course, in my case, space technology. The question is, how do we now affect this transition? We could leave it entirely to the natural forces of the market, demand for change and the supply of technology offering solutions. The market will sort it out. And whilst that's fine in principle, and there's no doubt the market will be critical, and looking back over the last 30 years, we might well see that the market has served us well with what has felt like a relentless change. However, just to take one data point, the internet has been around for 50 years. I first became aware of it and the importance of it in the early 90s. But here we are 30 years later, and we still don't have the internet in every home. And we've seen over the last 18 months what an important omission that's been for our society. Around the Western world, the situation is far worse. Getting the internet into every home is a trivial challenge compared with what we know we need to do over the next 30 years to our transport, energy, heating systems. So, in my mind, there's no doubt that we need to find a different way of doing things. In some countries, I'm looking at the NEOM project, which many people will be familiar with in Saudi Arabia. They're able to take a fresh start. They can look at a clean piece of paper and build a new city that's fit for the 21st century. And that's very much what they're looking to do out there. But for many of us, and most of us, this is not a realistic option. We need to think about how we upgrade the infrastructure that we have. And this is the real crux of my point. There are indeed many parts of the country that have been systematically underinvested for many years and have catching up to do. But we must think beyond that. We have a unique opportunity now to leapfrog our nation into the 21st century. Building on our scientific strengths and inventive prowess, we can kickstart a new green industrial revolution, just as we did 200 years ago. Let's look at this in just a little bit more detail. Our transport system. Let's reimagine now what a 21st century transport infrastructure and system could look like. We need to decarbonize our road systems, but we also need to eliminate congestion. It's been a real productivity killer for our economy, and it's only getting worse. And recently we've been looking at the transition to public transport as a solution to this, but that's taken a real hit during COVID as people have lost confidence in public transport and because of the risk of transmission. We need to look at sort of other solutions. How, for example, can we transform our logistics system? The paradigm of taking raw materials, transporting them halfway across the world to factories, transporting them halfway back across the world to distribution centers, and transporting them again to the end users and the customers. And we've got to find better ways of doing this. Are there ways of taking the logistics off our roads completely? How do we embrace drone technology to do all the last mile deliveries and replace all those delivery vans that we've now got on our roads? Can we do better things with electric barges on canals? We've got a chance now to really rethink the way that we do transportation in this country. And can we move to more local manufacturing? Again, part of that logistics transformation. Can we find ways of taking raw materials, embrace modern manufacturing techniques so that we do manufacturing much closer to where the demand is? Wouldn't it be great if our roads became a public amenity completely free of industrial traffic? But we've got a real chance now to try and look at that possibility and see what advancements we can do to make that happen. And again, on the energy sector, the transition to renewables is well underway, and we need to accelerate that. So much of that is happening in the parts of the world that are now, we're now talking about, part of the country that we're now talking about for leveling up. We still have questions over base load power. Can we take more advantage of local energy production? As announcements today with Rolls-Royce. Is space-based solar power an option? I think that's something people in my sector are starting to look at now, where we can collect the power in space and beam it back using microwaves down to collecting stations down on Earth. Some of the industries that will be hardest to crack, steel, maritime, aviation, have their history firmly embedded in our industrial heartlands. These are the natural places to be investing in developing solutions. And the debate now about opening a new coal mine in Yorkshire. We know that if we don't open up this coal mine, we will, the demand for steel isn't going to decrease, so we will be importing steel, which is probably an even higher carbon footprint. So can we make that as part of our commitment to develop low carbon steel and move towards zero carbon steel in Yorkshire, which is for so long been the heartland of the steel industry. Just as it was that the economic progress of the Industrial Revolution that enabled the services economy to develop, the knowledge centres now largely in the South will be able to kickstart this new transition. Once we get it underway, the new investment in science, innovation and economic growth will go straight into what are now the underinvested regions that need it most. And we will have created the high growth, balanced, well-distributed economy and the fair and equal society that we all aspire towards through the power of innovation. I'm just going to give a couple of very quick examples to try and bring this a little bit to life. So we heard that this isn't all about the difference between the north and south. Some of the most deprived areas around the country are in our coastal regions. We've been working on a project with DCMS to deliver 5G into Dorset using our sort of 5G core network at Prescott in Buckinghamshire. We're using satellite to control the network in Dorset, a very dispersed network using retired TV spectrum to deliver services out to 10 miles out at sea. And the feedback we're getting from the agricultural community, the users out on the sea, including people like the RNLI, the Coast Guard, has been phenomenal. It's completely transforming the way that they operate. And so that's very much looking like something we're going to look to expand around the rest of the country. And it's a great example of just rethinking how this infrastructure could be. And a project I'm not directly involved in, but there's announcements today, some of you may have seen, Reaction Engines, a company based in Oxfordshire, who are developing an air-breathing rocket engine, which will completely transform space transportation. But they're taking a component of that, their cooling system, to crack ammonia. I'm not even really sure what that means, to crack ammonia, but it's going to deliver, it has the potential to deliver carbon-free fuel to the maritime and the aviation sectors. two sectors that are some of the toughest to crack in terms of decarbonisation, and two of the sectors that, you know, the natural place to develop and grow this technology would be in some of the regions around our country that we're now talking about levelling up. So what I hope I've been able to do in my few minutes today is just to give a sense of the huge opportunity I believe we now have. This is a unique time where we know what we need to do and when we need to do it. We know from experience that we can't leave this to the natural order of the markets alone to resolve. We must mobilise a society, bringing public and private sector actors together at an unprecedented scale, and decide that we want to deliver this change. We do have the best science and technology, but as so often, that is not what will determine who prevails. It's about who has the strongest will to execute. If we do decide that, and I think this is really the most exciting thing, there is nowhere on earth better place than we are here in the UK to succeed. Thank you.